mercy and grace and peace to be here today and help you as the family and friends to be comforted and strengthened. Herbert Joe Laymon was born August 5th, 1934 in Roswell, New Mexico, to Clinton Alfred and Pauline Laymon. He was a brother to an older sister, Katie Hudson, and brother of Lloyd Laymon. He attended school in Roswell, but decided that after spending many long 6 years of learning, he had learned enough, and he had to step out on his own and make it in life. And I say that with tongue in cheek because many in that generation did leave school early because of work and other things. But as we go through, that you know him very well, you realize that he was quite an interesting man. He joined the Marines during the Korean conflict and had received orders to go to Korea when the peace talks had brought an end to the war, and it gave him active duty wartime status as a veteran. After that, he returned back to Roswell, where he completed his GED. He had a job in the oil fields of New Mexico, which wasn't a very clean job. He worked in the muddy clay and the dirt, just down with everything and getting filthy dirt. And I'm telling you that because you'll understand a little bit of the story, just a very small portion of the love story that was about to take place. A girl from Dallas was visiting a friend in Roswell, and that friend had a friend that worked in the oil fields, the oil well. Now, I threw this in with a desire to play matchmaker. This friend told her of a friend, and all of a sudden this guy walks up to her, covered from head to toe in clay and mud, because he just got off work. Not a very good first impression. As a matter of fact, she wasn't sure about that, but she went ahead and honored the wishes of her friend, and they went out on a date. Just wondering how that would go. But 2 days later, she announced their plans to get married. Her mom and dad, getting the news, wasn't so exciting. So they drove all the way to Roswell, New Mexico from Dallas, and in the words of the family, kidnapped their daughter and took her back home to protect her. But not to be outdone, he had found what he wanted and who he wanted. He sold everything he had and he moved to Dallas. And as they say, you know the rest of the story. A lifelong of 47 years until 8 years ago that Pauline made her transition. Jackie. I'm sorry. Their union produced their daughter, Rhonda. And most of you know her, but this will kind of give you a little bit of glimpse if you didn't know what the home life was like. Rhonda says she had a very happy home, secure home, and it was a place that she loved to be and felt safe, except when she would bring boys home, which she didn't always do. There was no sense in her mind of upsetting her dad or scaring the boys to death. She would tell her dad when she did bring one home, "Dad, you don't have to say anything, just make eye contact and go your way, please." With a strong emphasis on the please. That worked pretty well through the years until she brought a fellow by the name of Jason home. And somehow this was different. He liked him. He got to talking to him. The next day, Rhonda calls up and says, "We're going to have to break up because Dad likes you." But they worked it out, and you know that they're so together and support each other. But that was out of the ordinary for him. But it worked. He He was a hard-working man. He became lead mechanic for Delta Airlines, from which he retired, but actually he didn't know the word retire. As I sat and listened to Rhonda tell the story about how he would be fixing everything at home, whether it needed to be fixed or not, kind of gave his wife a little bit that old saying, you know, I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch type thing. But it worked out, and he was always very active until he began to struggle with the strokes that began to happen. One thing is for sure, he loved his family, he loved his daughter, and he loved his grandkids. But at work, his nickname was God. I'm not going to tell you what it means. You have to ask later. But that's what, and he received it affectionately. He liked that. You know, some of you here today know more than I do. He made his opinions very well known and direct, and you didn't have to agree with him. I heard one man say one time, in my highly accurate opinion, that was Herb. But that was okay. He made some friends and he made some enemies. And you know what? We walk through life, if you always try to please everybody, you really will never please anybody. So a man who had the grit within him to stand true to who he felt like he was and what he was. I mentioned the grandkids. I want you to realize he was more than just a granddad. He was actively involved in their lives, actually fulfilling the role of dad and granddad. He was at soccer games. He was active in the Cub Scouts. He helped to bring up Rhonda's boys. And oh, one more thing. He loved, and I emphasize, he loved country and western music and movies. As a matter of fact, Rhonda was sharing with me that he had purchased, and different ones had purchased the John Wayne movies, and he had watched every one of them probably many, many times. And finally, he agreed to begin watching John Wayne's wartime movies because he loved John Wayne and just what he represented. I might add here today, because I want you to understand, the service may not be real long today, but he didn't want a service at all. But for the sake of the family, it's important. And as you look at that picture and the arrangement up front, just know, especially to Rhonda and to Jason and the grandkids and the family, he loved you. He loved you so much. When I asked about his faith, I learned that he came from a Pentecostal background, but was introduced to some unusual practices. Now, I will, as I shared with Rhonda, I understand totally how he felt. I was raised in the same kind of background. Maybe not to one of the extremes that they had, and I smile at that. So religion for him was not something that he was drawn to. But he often expressed to his family that he did have faith in God and in Christ. He did understand one thing, that it was not about religion, and that's too much of the time we put so much stock into what religion is without a relationship. You say, well, I kind of prejudged him and predetermined that what a believer really is, and that's not our place. Because the Bible tells us that to confess with our mouth and to believe in our heart is the key to a relationship. And so I want you to understand that today, that we have to be careful not to predetermine or prejudge. But a man stands within his own heart and faith before God. He spent a lot of times outdoors. He loved hunting. He would spend weeks at a time during hunting season outside, and it was shared with me that when it came time for him to begin to liquidate things around him, and he was going to be moving in with his daughter and son-in-law, that all the things that he had accumulated through life, he kind of walked in one day and said, just get rid of everything except my guns. And if there was a way that he could slip them into heaven, he could help St. Peter at the gate to make sure other kinds of people didn't get in. Just to know that that's the way he was. Even as he suffered the effects of strokes, he would get out, play. She shared with me when they would go camping or do different things that they had water fights. And I would like to have seen some of these. These weren't with balloons or water hoses, it was with buckets of water. These were grown-ups acting like kids. So see, there's a lot of fun things to remember. The day that we never want to experience came March 13th, 4 minutes before 3 in the afternoon, when the results of and all the things they did to try to help him to recover, he didn't recover that afternoon, and he made a transition from pain and suffering to eternal rest. He's lovingly remembered by his daughter Rhonda and husband Jason Hennessy, grandchildren Renee and Tyler Bittner, Hannah Hennessy, Jack Laymon, Dominic Hennessy, and Chandler Davis, and great-grandchildren, Mackenzie and Elijah. We thought maybe some would like to speak today, but I understand totally how difficult it is. So I want to share with you one other thought before we close today. When I asked about Herb's faith, I learned quickly that he was his own man. And as I said earlier, he didn't care a lot about organized religion. I don't fault a man for that, because sometimes organized religion has done harm instead of good. But we have to be careful, nevertheless, not to totally place somebody in a category. One of the things that he had made known in times with family was he had a favorite passage of Scripture from the Word of God. And it was found in John 14. I mentioned to Rhonda that I might use it or one other one, and she said, oh no, he loved John 14. And so in his honor, in his life and faith, I have chosen to read this in our hearing today. And I want to preface the reading by saying that this came a time in Jesus' life when he was facing, I don't know if he knew how extreme the crucifixion would be, but I knew he was facing his death. He was facing a time in his life when he needed someone around him to strengthen and comfort him for what he was about to face. But his disciples, his followers, didn't get it. They didn't understand, and so he was having to turn around and comfort them. And so with this today, I pray that you receive the comfort that he gave that day, and you receive it as I read these words. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. Now I'm going to do something here. It says, Thomas said to him, but Herb could have said to him, Lord, we don't know the way. But Jesus responded, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He went through several verses, but the last verses I want to read are 27 and 29. Jesus then made this statement, peace I leave with you, my peace I give you. Not as the world gives do I give to you. Let not your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. That is an encouraging word, not only from what he loved to read, but for you today, that Jesus is still saying, I give you my peace. Even though we have tears, and even though we are going to miss him more than we can express in language, he says, don't let your heart be troubled, neither let it be afraid. And verse 29, he says, "Now I have told you before it comes, that when it does come to pass, you may believe." I've learned throughout my life in ministry that when it comes to a funeral or memorial service, what the preacher says or does cannot even scratch the surface, so to speak, of the life that was lived and the commitment and how his family and his friends cared for and loved them. I do know that people literally preach their own memorial service by the lives they live and how they believe. And it isn't so much what we saw from the outside that was important, but it was the things that many of us didn't see when he had those times of solitude with his family and with those he loved and cared for. He would protect his daughter. He would go to bat for these grandkids. You had an advocate and more than an advocate. If he had to do something to make sure you were cared for, he would do it. And that says something deeply about a man's commitment to those he loves, even though he could say things and do things that you didn't always understand. You knew it wasn't what he said, but what he did that made the impact in our lives. And so, although you will miss that, you will have a memory. We've done three things today. We had a time to remember, a time to say goodbye, and we've learned that there are lessons that we can learn from the lives that we have celebrated today. And so at this time, since the spirit of Herb Laymon has departed and returned to God who gave it, we commit that which remains to the God of all comfort and mercy. And with cherished memories in our hearts, we commit his earthly remains in the care of eternity. Earth to earth, ashes to ashes, and dust to dust. But knowing that the end of all flesh may be the grave here, but that in God is our eternal hope and glory. And we say that with a great amen. Would you bow your head? Father, this morning it is very, very difficult to come to a moment where we have to say goodbye. It's been a few days now and we've missed a dad and a granddad and a brother and a friend more than words can express. And tears come even in the midst of our laughter and remembering and joking. We are touched by how he cared and how he was willing to go the second mile. But I pray somehow through the words of John 14, which he cherished, that they speak to our hearts today, that we might find the comfort, that we might find the peace, that we may find the everlasting love that you have for each of us. Not that we form our lives into a religion of do's and don'ts, but that we put our faith and trust in you, who gave yourself for us. And I pray that the comfort of the Holy Spirit would attend to every one of these, of this daughter, the son-in-law, and these grandkids and great-grandkids. And sister, Lord, who is here today because she loved and she was loved. Father, we pray that the God of all mercy and all comfort be with them today, and may the blessing of your Spirit and of our memory, he will live on within our hearts and lives until we make the transition that he and his lovely bride made. We ask